Thank you.
Okay.
Your Excellencies, all protocols observed. It's a great pleasure to be part of this international conversation or conversations. And we've heard some very fine ideas and insights into how the world should be, drawing on the magnificent life and work of Nelson Mandela, or Madiba, as he was widely known. It'll be impossible to do justice to the qualities of Nelson Mandela, his life and work, because they are so multifaceted. And it'll also be unnecessary because, this is extremely well known. But what one draws inspiration from is his indomitable courage. He was gentle as well as firm in dealing with all manner of issues. He stood up against racist humiliation with tremendous, in fact, monumental patience, but also with a radical or revolutionary will to liberate himself and his people from the nightmare of apartheid, and by extension, all manner of injustices, atrocities, and so on around the world. And it is this spirit that one draws inspiration from. I had the privilege of meeting him, although very briefly, at a reception given by the then Prime Minister when Madiba made his first visit to India in 1990. That was in Delhi. As a journalist, I was also a part of the Indian media delegation that covered the inauguration of President Nelson Mandela. And the last time I saw him, was from a distance, was during the World Cup, which was held at Soccer City Stadium in Joburg on July 11, 2020. Very frail, but he was being driven in a vehicle, and it was a glorious moment for many of us. And I'm delighted that so many distinguished political figures and jurists largely from the Indian community or people of Indian origin, but also some others, are offering their insights and their suggestions on what needs to be done, what should be done. And I just want to make a few quick observations because we're getting on and there are other speakers as well. But I want to highlight the lessons we drew. His famous speech, or these excerpts from his famous speech during the Rivonia trial. This was, I believe, on April 20, 1964, has already been recalled about how I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination, and then the ideals he stood for. No need to repeat it, but those words ringed true even today. He started out as an advocate, as a supporter of the armed struggle, and ended up in a different place, although there was no inconsistency whatever in the way he pursued his goals or ideals. Let us also remember that those who lionized him, revered him, showered him with all kinds of honors, as late as the 1980s, called him a terrorist. And among those who used those derogatory phrases were Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and President Ronald Reagan. So the world has changed, and the achievements of one towering man. Of course, he was part of a movement, the African National Congress and its various heroic constituents, including the Communist Party of South Africa. But one man became the symbol of the fight against injustice, but in a way that was extremely constructive. That has to be remembered throughout. I remember as somebody who follows sports, I remember the methods he followed in enabling South Africa, soon after he became president, to host and indeed win the third Rugby World Cup. The way he, this was a white preserve before that, but the way he built harmony out of something that was awful, dominated by racism, was just magnificent. I also had the opportunity of visiting Robben Island and also entering the cell in which Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for, I believe, 18 out of the 27 years he spent in prison. And that was at one point a pilgrimage. It was a learning experience, and it was also an opportunity to recharge your moral batteries. The stories we heard there, just to be there was something very, very special. I just want to draw a couple of lessons for India, particularly for India, from what he stood for and what he taught all his, life. India is not in a happy place today. India is riven with divisions. Our distinguished speaker, Navi Pillai, I was very pleased that she spoke truth about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, in human rights violations, in the specter of communalism as a political mobilization strategy. References is also made in this conference to the ways of Hindu Rashtra, the Hindu right. Of course, we have to be even-handed and oppose communalism, divisive strategies, chauvinism, wherever it comes from, whether it is from the majority, whether it's resorted to in the name of the majority or in the name of minority communities, whether it is Muslim or Christian or whatever. And that even-handedness, I think, is very important. But having said that, today, India is being threatened. Our constitutional values, it is a very fine constitution, and I think in some respects, in South Africa, you improved on the values that are built into the Indian constitution, because much had been learnt by that time. And in many ways, we look up to the South African constitution. Those of us who believe in justice, in equality, in having to transform the world from where it is to a place that people like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi and others, Jawaharlal Nehru, etc., aspired to, as well as other revolutionaries aspired to. But I think it is the extreme right, the so-called Hindu nationalists. They're not nationalists because they divide the nation. And it is a misnomer. But I think today, the way they are going after the values embedded in the Indian constitution and also represented by the South African constitution, these universal values, as Navi Pillai spoke about, I think is a very serious concern, because as a journalist, I cannot possibly remain silent on this when we are speaking about a subject that is the theme of this conference, how to resolve, how to build peace, peace building and conflict resolution. I believe that India can do much better in dealing with its neighbors. I'm not saying that all that they do is right. There are issues, there are problems, many of them left over by history, such as the boundary question with China, such as the problems of Kashmir with Pakistan, such as issues with Nepal, or earlier even with Sri Lanka on the Tamil question. But for all this, India has done well in some areas, Indian governments as well as the political community and the public. But we should do much better. I don't believe that you can shut off all contacts, political contacts at the highest level, just because there are some issues, whether it is terrorism or an unresolved question. I think the need is to normalize relations, have good relations in all areas, and simultaneously try to address these issues. Secondly, I'm very seriously concerned about a certain tilt in India's foreign policy, because let us remember that Nelson Mandela, once he had turned down this the offer of a second term, the possibility of a second term, was a free man and could say things like, he described, I remember, Tony Blair as Bush's foreign minister. I think that was in the context of the Iraq war, and also, yeah. And he also said, when he was a free man, after he had served a term as president, that if there is a country that has committed unspeakable atrocities in the world, it is the United States of America. I certainly believe that, but there are those who may disagree with it. But the fact that a statesman, perhaps along with Mahatma Gandhi, the greatest person on, in the world, on the planet, in the 20th century, or one of the greatest, that he could say such things, I think is a lesson for all of us. We should not, in the name of diplomacy, remain silent on these issues. I was also pleased to see references were made to the Citizenship Act, also by implication, the National Register of Citizens and so on, targeting Indian Muslims. There's no doubt about it. We have to address these issues ourselves, and there is nothing wrong if people of goodwill who live abroad, particularly those who know the Indian situation well, speak up on these issues. Whether it is a congresswoman in the United States or somebody of Indian origin in South Africa or in the Caribbean or in Seychelles or anywhere, if they speak the truth on this, we as independent citizens should certainly cherish that and learn from that. This is something that we should learn from those like Mahatma Gandhi and also Nelson Mandela in the most recent period. So I'm delighted that my friend, Dr. Sampath, and the Madras Development Society has actually brought so many people together, and was mentioned earlier. This is a time of great challenge, great stress, even a crisis on a global scale, unprecedented. But a few of the advantages are that we can bring people together like this, which could not be done earlier without going through great trouble and expense. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that these conversations will be continued on a sustained basis. No use just holding one conference. These issues have to be discussed continuously, and new insights are to be brought together, new experiences, and solutions have to be found. Only then would we be paying a real tribute to one of the greatest, one of the heroes of modern times, Nelson Mandela. Thank you, Dr. Sampath, and everyone else who's been part of this excellent effort.